They say the castle appeared out of mist, a silhouette born from magic and memory. Long before children carried wands or names like Potter and Malfoy were whispered through its halls, there was only a mountain, a storm, and a dream that refused to die. In the highlands of ancient Scotland, where the fog folds itself around the earth like a sleeping dragon, 4 figures came walking. Each carried a fragment of a vision, a sanctuary where magic could live unashamed. But beneath that noble wish, something older stirred, a hunger for power, for legacy, for control over what could never truly be tamed. Hogwarts was not built in a single season. It rose slowly, stone by stone, spell by spell. The foundation was soaked in both wonder and warning. Legends say the land itself resisted, that the earth quaked when the first enchantments were cast, and shadows swirled at the edges of every flame. Some called it nature's protest. Others believed the site had already been claimed by older forces. No one speaks of the castle's first guardian, a creature that predated the founders. It is said that Rowena Ravenclaw heard its voice in her dreams, a whisper urging her to carve wisdom from chaos, to build walls high enough to keep the darkness out. But Salazar Slytherin heard something else, an invitation, a promise that the true power of the castle would belong not to those who feared the dark, but to those who understood it. And so Hogwarts was born, not from harmony, but from disagreement, not from peace, but from compromise. Every corridor was a negotiation, every tower a truce. The founders smiled for the portraits that would one day hang in grand halls, but behind their eyes burned secrets that even magic could not cleanse. Few remember that in its earliest years Hogwarts had no great hall, no floating candles, no sorting hat. The first sorting was not by choice or ceremony, it was by instinct. The castle itself, newly alive, drew each student to their house as if by scent. Some say the walls whispered their names. Others recalled doors that refused to open for those unworthy of their path. But the real mystery lies deeper. Beneath the stone foundations, in tunnels long forgotten, there are markings, runes older than English or Latin, pulsing faintly with enchantments that no one can decipher. They speak of a covenant older than the founders themselves, of something that was promised and something that was imprisoned. The castle has shifted over centuries. Rooms vanish, staircases move, portraits breathe. But this too may not be whimsy. What if Hogwarts moves not out of mischief, but out of fear? What if the castle remembers what it was built upon and what it was built to contain? The founders may have believed they created a school, but those who listen closely, in the silence between midnight bells, know otherwise. They did not build a school. They awoke a sleeping god. Before Hogwarts had its towers, before the ghosts had chosen their haunts, there were only 4 figures standing in the rain. Godric Gryffindor, Rowena Ravenclaw, Helga Hufflepuff, and Salazar Slytherin, names now carved into legend, but once they were only people. Tired, brilliant, flawed people. Each carried a fragment of the same dream and a different shadow. It is said that on the night they swore their covenant, thunder rolled so close it seemed the heavens themselves were listening. The wind howled through the valley like an ancient voice, approving, warning, perhaps both. Beneath that storm, they spoke words that were never written down, a pact of secrecy, sealed not in ink, but in intent. They would build a haven for the gifted, a fortress of learning against a world that hunted those born strange. But as their spells fused stone and spirit, another force listened, one that did not belong to them. Helga, gentle-hearted and wise in the ways of earth, felt it first. As she planted the first enchanted seeds in the castle's soil, the ground trembled faintly beneath her hands. "Something beneath us wakes," she whispered. Rowena, ever the scholar, dismissed it as old magic stirring, but Salazar looked to the shadows and smiled. He believed that not all power was meant to be feared, that darkness, properly understood, could be a teacher. That was their first division, and from it, everything else would grow. Gryffindor wanted courage to guide the young. Hufflepuff, fairness. Ravenclaw, intellect. Slytherin, ambition. They thought these virtues would balance each other, but the castle had its own interpretation. It absorbed their magic, their emotions, their rivalries, and it learned from them. Hogwarts became a living mirror, reflecting their strengths and multiplying their flaws. In those first years, the school was small, a handful of apprentices studying runes by candlelight, learning spells too dangerous to be spoken beyond its walls. But strange things began to happen. Doors that should not exist appeared in the night, flames burned green when no one was watching, and sometimes the castle whispered back. Rowena began recording these phenomena in a secret grimoire known only as the Codex of the First Stone. Her notes speak of echoes beneath the foundation, of dreams shared among the founders, of a voice, ancient, patient, murmuring from deep below the dungeons. She wrote that it called itself the memory of the earth. Helga feared it. Salazar sought it. Gryffindor swore to destroy it if ever it rose. And Ravenclaw, she listened, torn between curiosity and dread. The castle's enchantments grew stronger, wilder. Staircases rearranged themselves as though obeying unseen hands. Books whispered secrets to those who dared to stay awake past midnight. And at the heart of it all, in the newly formed chamber beneath the Great Hall, the air grew thick with magic, dense, heavy, breathing. It was there that the founders made their final enchantment together, a spell to bind the school's heart to their will. But in binding it, they awakened something else entirely. When dawn came, the storm had passed. The valley was silent except for the dripping rain from the towers. But those who were there that morning swore they saw lightning coil down into the earth, not strike it, but enter it. And from that day onward, the castle was never still again. Hogwarts lived. It thought. It remembered. And somewhere deep beneath its stones, it began to wait. Centuries later, students would whisper about it. A secret room buried beneath the school, sealed by magic so ancient that even the headmasters dared not seek it. But the truth is, the Chamber of Secrets was not a myth. It was a memory, a scar left by an argument that tore the founders apart. The chamber was never meant to exist. It was not part of the original design, not in Rowena's plans or Helga's careful sketches of the castle grounds. It appeared after the storm binding, that night, when the lightning crawled into the earth and the stones began to breathe. When the founders explored the catacombs days later, they found corridors where none had been before. A circular vault of green-black stone pulsing faintly with magic, its walls slick with condensation, as though the castle itself was sweating from the effort of creation. Salazar Slytherin claimed it was destiny. He said the castle had recognized him, that it had built a sanctum for the secrets too dangerous for the others to know. Godric Gryffindor called it blasphemy. "The school is ours, not yours," he thundered. "No man may claim what the earth itself rejects." But the rift had already begun to spread between them like a crack in glass. Slytherin spent nights alone beneath the castle, inscribing runes in languages even Rowena couldn't read. Some believed he was trying to harness the ancient memory of the earth that had whispered to them during the castle's awakening. Others whispered darker things, that he was building a doorway, a mouth for the sleeping intelligence below to finally speak through. The first disappearance happened soon after. An apprentice named Ellen of the Lowlands, bright, fearless, barely 14, was last seen carrying water to the lower kitchens. By morning, Her shoes were found beside a door that hadn't existed the night before. Her name faded from the rolls within a week. No one ever spoke of her again. Helga Hufflepuff wept. Rowena recorded. Gryffindor raged. But Slytherin only said, "The castle takes what it needs." And then, one by one, more doors appeared. Behind some lay nothing but dust and silence. Behind others, chambers of exquisite design, intricate mosaics, silver-lined pools, corridors lit by floating serpentine symbols. The castle was dreaming new rooms into being. Yet for every wonder that appeared, something else was lost. A memory, a student, a truth. When Rowena tried to map the lower levels, her ink bled from the parchment, as though the castle refused to be known. She realized something terrible. Hogwarts did not simply contain magic, it fed on it. The enchantments of the founders, the curiosity of the students, even the fear of those who wandered too deep, all of it nourished the living labyrinth. Then one night, Salazar vanished too. They found his study sealed from within, his belongings undisturbed. The last page in his journal was written in a trembling hand. The voice is clearer now. It knows my name. After that, no one went below the dungeons again. The passages sealed themselves. The walls shifted. Time folded over the memory like dust on a forgotten relic. Centuries passed, and with them, the truth turned to myth. Children would one day joke about monsters in the pipes, never realizing they were repeating an echo older than the castle's staircases. And deep beneath the great hall, past layers of forgotten stone and silence, something ancient listened, patient, unblinking, waiting for the day it would be called again. The whispers that traveled through the castle stones told of more than missing students and shifting corridors. They told of a fracture so deep that Hogwarts itself trembled at its echo. The betrayal of a founder. Not a rumor, not a legend embroidered by time, but a truth deliberately hidden from history. Salazar Slytherin, it seems, was not merely ambitious. He was terrified. He feared what he called the impurity of blood, and he believed that the magic of Hogwarts could be diluted by unworthy hands. To him, only those with the purest lineage could safely wield the school's power. Gryffindor, steadfast and brimming with fiery morality, argued that the castle's magic belonged to anyone brave enough to seek it. And Rowena, ever the intellectual, tried in vain to mediate with reason and charm. Helga pleaded for fairness, for kindness, for community. But Slytherin's mind had already wandered to shadows no one else could see. One storm-torn night, he descended into the hidden vaults beneath the dungeons, following a passage that none but he could find. The castle's stones resonated under his touch, singing in a language older than the founders themselves. There, in the deepest chamber, he performed a rite so potent that it left marks not only in the earth but in time itself. He conjured a serpent, yes, but not an ordinary one. This was a creature made from memory, fear, and promise, bound to him by every secret he had whispered to the castle. It was the progenitor of the basilisk, and it was the instrument of his vision, a safeguard that would purge the school of those he deemed unworthy. But the betrayal ran deeper than this creation. In secret correspondence preserved in charred, nearly indecipherable scrolls, Slytherin made a pact with forces older than Hogwarts itself. These entities, unnamed in any surviving record, promised him insight, power, and guardianship of the school's deepest magics, in exchange for a loyalty the others could never imagine. When Gryffindor discovered what had been done, he demanded justice. But the spellwork was beyond even his comprehension. Even the castle recoiled, reshaping its walls to hide the evidence. Helga wept at the betrayal, her heart fracturing as she realized the friend she had trusted most had chosen secrecy and fear over fellowship. Rowena recorded in her journals with trembling hand, "Magic is not neutral. It listens, It judges. It punishes the heart that commands it without wisdom. For years, the founders argued, plotted, and tried to seal the darkness away. They constructed wards, charms, and enchantments to contain the basilisk and the voice that whispered in the hidden chambers. But each attempt came at a cost. Passageways disappeared, students were lost, memories shifted, and Hogwarts itself learned how to protect the secret. This betrayal was not simply moral, it was architectural. Every staircase, every portrait, every enchanted ceiling is, in part, a testament to a compromise between vision and fear, love and suspicion, freedom and control. The school is haunted not only by ghosts, but by the moral choices of its creators, the echoes of their conflicts embedded in the very stones. By the time Slytherin vanished, the other founders were exhausted, hearts heavy with grief and guilt. Gryffindor, though triumphant in argument, had lost a friend. Helga, saddened but resolute, devoted herself to ensuring students would still learn loyalty and courage. Rowena, meticulous and solemn, chronicled every hidden history she could discern, yet knew her work would one day be buried by the very students she sought to enlighten. And so Hogwarts became two things at once: a sanctuary of learning and a living memorial to betrayal. Beneath its surface, in the dungeons that shifted and breathed, the consequences of fear lingered, waiting, patient, hungry for the day the next foolish ambition would awaken them. Tonight, centuries later, students walk the halls unaware of the tremors beneath their feet. Portraits smile, staircases shift, and ghosts drift in quiet halls. But the lessons of betrayal, hidden in every stone, remain. Hogwarts remembers. It never forgets. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the castle's torches flicker and shadows stretch along the walls, there exists a curriculum that is rarely acknowledged, even in whispered student lore. These were the lessons that Helga and Rowena could not openly teach, yet that Gryffindor insisted be preserved in secret. The lessons that balanced the danger Slytherin had unleashed, yet brushed perilously close to it. The library, as most knew it, was only the surface. Beneath it, behind false shelves and enchanted bricks, lay a collection of manuscripts older than the castle itself. They were penned in hands long turned to dust, in scripts whose letters twisted and shimmered as if alive. The texts contained instructions for spells that could alter memory, manipulate emotion, and summon creatures from the shadowed edges of reality. To the founders, these were not tools of cruelty. They were instruments of understanding, exercises in discipline, ethics, and consequence. Yet the temptation for power was undeniable. In those hidden chambers, Gryffindor taught his most trusted pupils the art of discernment, how to navigate magic that was morally ambiguous, how to recognize the cost of every spell cast, how to respect the boundary between knowledge and hubris. Lessons began with small, symbolic exercises, moving objects without touching them, reading the intentions of a magical creature, or uncovering a hidden trap within the walls. But the lessons always concluded with a question, sharp as a serpent's fang. Does mastery justify interference? The students who excelled became apprentices of sorts, inheritors of a moral and magical responsibility that extended beyond the school itself. Helga and Rowena ensured that ethics and strategy were inseparable, embedding in every exercise an understanding that knowledge without accountability was a form of destruction. Yet even with careful guidance, accidents occurred. One record, preserved in a charred corner of Rowena's journals, recounts a student who summoned a shadow beast to test a theoretical protection charm. The creature, appearing as a black fog with eyes like molten gold, slipped the wards and roamed corridors until Gryffindor himself intervened. The student survived, but the memory of fear, of power unrestrained, lingered in the walls, a cautionary echo for generations. Meanwhile, Slytherin's influence quietly persisted. The serpent he had conjured in the deepest vaults responded to instinct and ambition alike. Even as the founders attempted to seal it, the basilisk's presence loomed over the school's hidden curriculum. Students who strayed too close to forbidden knowledge sensed a subtle resistance, a whispering warning embedded in the stones themselves. Some lessons are as dangerous as they are illuminating. It was within this tension between possibility and peril that Hogwarts truly matured as a school of magic. Its students learned not only charms and hexes, but the art of navigating consequences. They became adept at seeing the unseen, not just ghosts or enchanted objects, but the moral weight of action and the ripple of decisions across generations. The forbidden lessons were more than survival skills. They were preparation for life in a world shaped by unpredictability and ambition. By mastering shadowed knowledge under careful guidance, students developed foresight, creativity, and resilience. They learned to anticipate the ambitions of peers, the duplicities of the powerful, and the subtle manipulations of magic itself. Yet even with these teachings, Hogwarts was never safe. Corridors shifted, lessons mutated, and traps lingered in forgotten classrooms. The castle had become a living puzzle, an interactive chronicle of triumph and tragedy, and students were both explorers and witnesses. Every exercise in the hidden chambers was a negotiation with history, with the choices of founders who had loved, feared, and betrayed. Tonight, as the wind whispers through the towers and the moonlight slants across the stone, one could almost hear the pulse of these lessons. The echo of practiced wands, the soft rustle of ancient parchment, and the faint hiss of a serpent unseen, all remind us that Hogwarts's true curriculum has always been about more than spells. It has been about understanding the fragile balance between power and responsibility, fear and courage, secrecy and trust. In this secret education, every student carries the weight of history, a weight invisible to casual observers, yet tangible to those who have dared to seek the forbidden. And though centuries have passed since the founders first hid their most dangerous knowledge, the castle ensures it is never forgotten. The lessons remain, waiting for the brave, the curious, and the morally vigilant to uncover them, if they can endure the truth they reveal. As the sun dips beneath the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and fiery oranges, Hogwarts transforms once again. The castle's walls, ancient and knowing, seem to breathe with stories long untold. It is in these hours, between dusk and midnight, that the ghosts of ambition awaken, not the spectral remnants of students or teachers, but the lingering presence of choices made, power sought, and consequences endured. Every hallway, every spiral staircase carries an imprint of desire. Slytherin's cunning ambition, Ravenclaw's relentless pursuit of knowledge, Gryffindor's daring courage, and Hufflepuff's steadfast diligence. These were not mere traits, but forces that shaped the castle itself. They echo in whispered warnings and unseen guidance, influencing generations of students long after the founders themselves became legend. The most striking of these presences are the moral echoes of the ambitious. Those who sought power for self-interest often found their desires preserved as lessons in the architecture and enchantments of the school. A room locked for centuries might suddenly offer a glimpse of unearned pride, a corridor's twisting walls, a puzzle reflecting greed's consequences. Students who wander too deeply into ambition's shadow sometimes hear a voice, gentle but insistent, questioning the cost of every victory. At what price do you seek success? The ghosts of ambition are not all cautionary. Some, like the spectral forms of former champions and innovators, serve as guides. They reveal the paths of cleverness used wisely, of intellect harnessed for creation rather than destruction. One story tells of a former Ravenclaw who in her lifetime engineered a spell capable of accelerating plant growth, a blessing to the wizarding world, but only when wielded with foresight and restraint. Her spectral presence can still be felt in the greenhouses, whispering subtle instructions to those who approach with curiosity rather than greed. Hogwarts, it seems, functions as a living moral ledger. The castle absorbs the ambitions of its inhabitants, recording both noble and ignoble intent. Even the walls remember. In a forgotten classroom beneath the astronomy tower, faint traces of past duels shimmer in the air, magic unleashed by youthful pride, excitement, and untempered skill. Here, ambition left both triumph and ruin behind, a spectral lesson in power's dual nature. This orchestration of history and consequence is particularly visible during examinations. Students may believe their tests are purely academic, but Hogwarts ensures they are also ethical. Every challenge, from potion making to defensive spell work, carries a hidden dimension, a test of temperament, judgment, and self-restraint. The castle, like a silent mentor, observes, remembers, and teaches through experience. Meanwhile, ambition's ghosts are never neutral. They interact with the living in subtle ways. A student who seeks personal glory may find their spells misfiring or their carefully laid plans subtly disrupted. Conversely, those who pursue collective good, who balance cleverness with compassion, often experience extraordinary success, almost as if the castle itself conspires to amplify virtue over selfishness. It is a living network of moral feedback, a system of accountability built into the very stones. Yet the darker lessons are not confined to personal ambition. Hogwarts has witnessed political maneuvering and secret alliances for centuries. The ghosts of ambitious wizards who sought control of knowledge, influence over faculty, or dominance in magical duels continue to haunt negotiation rooms and council chambers. Their presence is a constant reminder that power, if unchecked, corrupts. Students, unknowingly, learn to navigate these subtleties, practicing diplomacy and discernment long before they leave the castle walls. Perhaps most hauntingly, these ghosts teach the fragility of trust. In hidden chambers, one can sometimes glimpse faint silhouettes replaying scenes of betrayal. A student handing forbidden knowledge to a rival, a teacher exploiting a pupil's naivety, the shimmer of a spell turned toward malice rather than purpose. The lessons are encoded in emotion as much as magic, and students who are attentive can feel the tension, the consequences, and the haunting regret. By observing ambition in its spectral forms, students internalize a complex understanding of power, responsibility, and foresight. They learn that success is inseparable from consequence, and that personal achievement cannot exist without an awareness of its impact on the wider community. Hogwarts, in its subtle brilliance, ensures that every pupil carries these lessons forward, whether consciously or not. As night deepens and the castle settles into silence, the ghosts of ambition recede, leaving faint echoes in corridors and classrooms. But the lessons remain. Every flicker of candlelight, every shadow cast by the towering arches, reminds students that ambition, like magic, is neither inherently good nor evil. It is the choices one makes with it that define the future. And so, as the first stirrings of dawn touch the highest towers, Hogwarts breathes a quiet promise to mold, to guide, and to preserve the wisdom of ambition for those daring enough to learn from it. Beneath the towering spires and endless corridors of Hogwarts lies a world few students ever glimpse. Not the dungeons or kitchens they know by routine, but the ancient stones themselves, carved with runes, etched with symbols, and suffused with magic older than the castle's memory. These foundations are repositories, not just of structural integrity, but of knowledge, warnings, and the echoes of choices made centuries before. The castle's earliest builders were not mere masons. They were scholars of magical architecture, philosophers of enchantment, and stewards of both safety and secrecy. Every block, every arch, Every winding passage was imbued with intention. Some stones bear protective runes designed to shield future generations from the most destructive spells known to wizard kind. Others encode lessons, subtle cues for the attentive, hints about navigating the complexities of magical and human nature alike. In the shadowed tunnels beneath the castle, long-forgotten chambers whisper with their original purpose. The room now labeled the Chamber of Mysteries was once a library of forbidden lore, stocked with scrolls on ancient magic, alchemical processes, and the subtle manipulations of the human mind. Here, the castle preserved dangerous knowledge, not for power, but for learning, to ensure that those who encountered it were tested as much in character as in intellect. It is in these subterranean passages that the darker aspects of Hogwarts history emerge. Centuries ago, ambitious students and rogue professors attempted to exploit these hidden chambers. Some sought immortality, others control over magical creatures or forbidden enchantments. The castle's enchantments, attuned to intention and morality, reacted. Spells backfired, corridors shifted, and illusions became warnings etched in stone. Some of these failures are still visible today. Walls scorched with spectral fire, floors warped in impossible angles, and echoes of chants that were never meant to leave the past. Yet even in these lessons of caution, there is ingenuity. Hogwarts did not simply punish, it educated. Hidden mechanisms were created to transform failure into understanding. A collapsed passage might reveal a secret window, allowing light to reach a darkened chamber. A miscast spell could animate runes that gently guided the student to a safer approach. Every trap, every illusion, every misstep was embedded with didactic purpose, an education that was both practical and moral. The castle's hidden chambers also house memories of collaboration. Wizards who might have been rivals in the wider world worked together to solve architectural and magical challenges. Evidence of joint efforts remains in interlocking enchantments that only function when multiple users contribute their skills, a subtle metaphor for the cooperative values Hogwarts prized. Here, the walls themselves seem to whisper, true strength emerges when knowledge is shared, not hoarded. These stones also carry the imprint of fear, ambition, and sacrifice. The earliest protective wards were crafted during turbulent times, when dark forces threatened the safety of the castle and the surrounding lands. Some wards required sacrifices, not of life, but of personal ambition, pride, or freedom, binding part of the spellcaster's own power to ensure the stability of generations to come. Such bindings became lessons for those who walked these halls, a reminder that magic is inseparable from responsibility. Perhaps the most enigmatic of the hidden chambers is the Hall of Whispers, a corridor lined with statues whose eyes seem almost alive. Each figure represents a student or teacher who left a permanent mark, some through brilliance, others through tragedy. When approached with humility, the statues whisper guidance, reflecting lessons the castle has distilled from centuries of human experience. It is a subtle, living archive, a bridge between memory and instruction, history and morality. Hogwarts' foundations are not static, they respond to the castle's inhabitants. A student who approaches with curiosity and respect might discover hidden doors or illuminated inscriptions revealing insights into magical theory or ethical dilemmas. A student with reckless intent, by contrast, finds obstacles, confusion, and even temporary peril. The castle evaluates, adjusts, and teaches. It is a sentient curriculum woven into stone and mortar. Beneath the stone, the narrative of Hogwarts history is preserved, not merely the acts of celebrated heroes, but the quiet lessons of those who erred, of ambition unchecked, and of choices that shaped both castle and community. In these shadows, one realizes that Hogwarts' true power is not in spells, artifacts, or the fame of its alumni, It is in the careful, deliberate cultivation of wisdom and the subtle orchestration of learning through both triumph and mistake. As dawn approaches and the first light touches the castle's outer towers, the secrets beneath the stone remain largely invisible, yet their influence is palpable. Students who walk the corridors may sense it, the faint hum of magic, the whisper of lessons, the subtle guidance of history itself. Hogwarts is alive, not only in its people but in its very structure, and every stone carries the weight and wisdom of centuries. The forbidden curricula will reveal the lessons and subjects that were never meant to be taught openly. Curricula hidden in plain sight, reserved for those who dared to understand the deepest, most dangerous dimensions of magic. As the morning sun spills across the castle's towering walls, it illuminates classrooms where students diligently practice charms, transfiguration, and potion making. Yet hidden just beyond the familiar corridors lies a layer of instruction that few ever glimpse. These were the forbidden curricula, courses not listed in the standard course catalog, not sanctioned by every headmaster, yet meticulously preserved through generations. They were the backbone of Hogwarts' subtle mastery, a testament to the castle's belief that true magic is inseparable from discipline, moral understanding, and the courage to face danger. The origins of these forbidden lessons trace back to the founders themselves. Salazar Slytherin, often remembered only for his obsession with blood purity, contributed practical knowledge of protective enchantments, secret passages, and the ethical use of coercive magic. Helga Hufflepuff, with her focus on loyalty and community, developed lessons in magical labor and group problem-solving, including spells and techniques for maintaining long-term societal stability. Rowena Ravenclaw's contributions were profound. She designed curricula that taught not only logic and memory, but also ethical reasoning in high-risk magical applications. Godric Gryffindor, famed for bravery, embedded challenges in the lessons that required courage, ingenuity, and resilience, forcing students to confront the consequences of their choices. These secret teachings were never meant for casual students. They were designed to cultivate discernment. One might be learning standard potion techniques, yet tucked within a hidden compartment of a textbook or inscribed subtly on a classroom wall would be a variation of a recipe with devastating consequences if misused. The castle trusted that students who were attentive, patient, and morally grounded could discover these layers, gaining knowledge that extended far beyond conventional instruction. Those who sought shortcuts, who craved power without reflection, would find failure and sometimes danger. One of the most notable aspects of the forbidden curricula was their focus on moral ambiguity. Students were taught spells whose effects were not inherently good or evil, but depended entirely on the user's intentions. Lessons in charm manipulation, memory alteration, and magical influence were paired with intense reflection exercises. The castle itself would amplify missteps. A student experimenting recklessly might find that the charms resisted their control or that illusions became nightmares. Hogwarts' walls ensured that learning was never divorced from consequence. Even subjects that seemed benign on the surface contained hidden depths. Herbology classes included sections on plants capable of inducing visions or manipulating emotions. Astronomy lessons were paired with divination exercises that asked students to interpret patterns with social as well as cosmic significance. Ancient runes taught linguistic precision, but also encoded codes for cryptic communication and the safeguarding of secrets. Each subject was a matrix of practical skill, ethical reflection, and subtle power. The forbidden curricula also emphasized the continuity of knowledge across generations. Headmasters and senior students would leave marginalia, annotations, and hidden notes within texts and classrooms, intended for those willing to seek them out. These annotations were layered with meaning. Some were cryptic riddles, some cautions, others encouragements. A diligent student could follow this breadcrumb trail and access centuries of wisdom, learning not only spells and theories, but the judgments, errors, and triumphs of those who came before. Yet the castle was selective. Hogwarts seemed almost sentient in determining who could access these lessons. Curiosity alone was insufficient. Attention to nuance, respect for the power being studied, and ethical mindfulness were prerequisites. In essence, the forbidden curricula were as much a test of character as a source of magical expertise. The walls, floors, and hidden chambers acted as both guardians and mentors, rewarding the thoughtful while warning the reckless. One corridor, accessible only when the moonlight hit a specific set of runes during certain nights, contained scrolls detailing the manipulation of elemental forces in ways that could shape landscapes. Another, concealed behind a tapestry in the library, held texts on advanced mind-link spells, techniques allowing wizards to share or influence memories. These were not taught for practical convenience, but for the cultivation of responsibility, empathy, and strategic foresight. Misuse could cause calamity, yet mastery brought unparalleled insight and societal benefit. Perhaps the most extraordinary dimension of the forbidden curricula was their integration of practical, social, and moral instruction. Students learning advanced enchantments were simultaneously guided to consider their effects on communities, on magical creatures, and on the natural balance. Hogwarts understood intuitively that magic is not merely an art or a tool. It is a web of cause and effect, and its practice is inseparable from wisdom. As evening descends and candlelight flickers against the stone, one begins to appreciate the quiet genius of these lessons. They are subtle, dangerous, and transformative, demanding respect and dedication. The forbidden curricula are a testament to Hogwarts' deeper mission, not simply to produce powerful wizards, but to cultivate individuals capable of wielding extraordinary abilities responsibly, ethically, and creatively. Next, The Shadow of Professors Past will explore the teachers themselves, their hidden ambitions, rivalries, and the influence they wielded over generations of students, shaping the very culture of Hogwarts in ways history rarely acknowledges. As the dawn light creeps over the castle towers, the echo of footsteps in empty corridors tells a story far older than the current generation of students. Hogwarts is not merely a place of learning. It is a living archive of ambition, rivalry, and subtle power struggles. Beneath the veneer of lectures and lessons lies the shadow of professors past, individuals whose influence lingers long after their tenure ends, shaping students and the very culture of the school. Every professor, from the most celebrated to the quietly feared, left fingerprints on Hogwarts that are still visible if one knows where to look. Albus Dumbledore, often remembered for his geniality and wisdom, concealed layers of political and magical acumen that few truly understood. His decisions, seemingly benevolent, were often calculated interventions, designed to mold students into ethical thinkers while subtly navigating threats that reached far beyond the castle walls. Yet even he was not immune to the weight of history. The conflicts, rivalries, and mistakes of his predecessors haunted his choices. Consider Severus Snape. His life at Hogwarts is widely remembered as one of tension, secrecy, and moral ambiguity. But beyond the personal drama lies a deeper reality. Snape embodied the complexity of mentorship in a school built on centuries of layered knowledge. He inherited traditions, rivalries, and enmities from teachers long gone, and his own methods, harsh, precise, and occasionally cruel, were extensions of the castle's persistent lessons. Power must always be tempered with strategy, observation, and cunning. His influence was not merely punitive, it instilled resilience, precision, and foresight in students who could survive the trials of both school and world beyond. Hogwarts staff were never neutral. Every classroom, corridor, and hidden chamber became a site of subtle influence, where professors enacted visions for the students' moral and intellectual development. Minerva McGonagall, for instance, wielded authority not merely to enforce rules but to cultivate loyalty, courage, and adaptability. Her lessons extended beyond transfiguration. She taught observation, patience, and judgment, skills critical in navigating the morally ambiguous challenges that Hogwarts placed before every student. Yet not all professors acted in alignment with ethical guidance. The castle's history records moments of covert experimentation with dark or dangerous magic, often justified as preparation for real-world threats. Certain potions masters, long forgotten by popular memory, introduced experimental formulas that risked student safety under the guise of advanced learning. The castle, in its own cryptic way, seemed to judge these risks. Those who approached with respect and intellect often survived and thrived. Those motivated by arrogance or impatience paid the price. The interplay between professors was equally consequential. Alliances, rivalries, and unspoken agreements shaped the curricula, influenced disciplinary practices, and determined which students thrived. Classrooms were not isolated. They were nodes in a vast network of pedagogical and political strategy. A decision by one professor, what lesson to emphasize, which students to encourage, could ripple across decades, influencing cohorts of students and the eventual shaping of magical society beyond the castle walls. Hogwarts' long memory is not merely academic, it is strategic. Portraits lining the hallways, for instance, were more than decorative relics. They were repositories of mentorship, advice, and subtle surveillance. Many portraits contain hidden warnings, historical context, and guidance for those who engage with them attentively. Students who conversed with these painted teachers often gained insight into the castle's deeper lessons, learning the subtleties of magical history, ethics, and strategy without ever realizing they were being guided by centuries of experience. Even the headmaster's offices hold secrets. Behind Dumbledore's seemingly welcoming door lay records, artifacts, and enchanted objects that chronicled the triumphs and failures of every professor who had walked those halls. Within these chambers, policy decisions and student guidance were informed by lessons drawn from generations, warnings of ambition unchecked, examples of courage rewarded, and the subtle, often invisible hand of influence stretching across time. The shadow of professors' past also extends into intangible legacies. Certain charms, rituals, and teaching methods passed from teacher to teacher, subtly evolving over centuries. These legacies were more than tradition, they were adaptive systems. Hogwarts understood that its survival and the moral and intellectual growth of its students depended on the continuous refinement of knowledge, tempered by the wisdom of past mistakes. A careless or malevolent professor could disrupt this delicate equilibrium, but the castle itself served as a stabilizing force, ensuring continuity, correction, and subtle mentorship. What emerges from this complex history is a profound truth. Hogwarts' greatness was never solely in its walls, spells, or magical artifacts. Its strength lay in the invisible web of guidance, influence, and historical memory maintained by its professors. Each student absorbed not only lessons in magic, but lessons in observation, judgment, and strategy. The castle's faculty were simultaneously guardians, experimenters, and architects of social and moral education, shaping generations capable of navigating a world filled with both wonder and danger. As twilight descends and the corridors empty once again, one can feel the echoes of countless teachers past, their decisions, ambitions, and rivalries embedded in the very stones. Hogwarts is alive with memory, teaching lessons that extend beyond any classroom, guiding those willing to listen through the intricate balance of power, ethics, and magical mastery. As the first light of dawn touches the castle turrets, another layer of Hogwarts history begins to reveal itself. The intricate web of secret societies, clandestine pacts, and hidden alliances that operated beneath the school's celebrated public order. These networks were not mere adolescent clubs or fanciful games. They were structured, strategic, and often decisive in shaping the moral and political landscape of the wizarding world. Understanding Hogwarts requires understanding the forces that thrived in shadow, unseen yet profoundly influential. Long before the Sorting Hat placed students into houses, subtle alliances were being formed. Certain families, particularly those with wealth, bloodline prestige, or hidden ambitions, quietly guided their children toward specific houses and mentors who could cultivate their unique talents. These decisions, seemingly benign, laid the groundwork for decades-long networks that intertwined ambition with loyalty, often transcending generations. The most famous of these networks, the historically contested Inquisitor's Circle, was rumored to have operated as an internal regulatory body within Hogwarts. Far from the official professorial oversight, its members, students, and occasionally sympathetic staff monitored magical experimentation, enforced secret codes of conduct, and arbitrated disputes that could destabilize the fragile equilibrium of the school. Though its existence was rarely documented, traces of its influence are evident in certain disciplinary practices, mysterious guidance from portraits, and the unspoken respect students had for particular corners of the castle. Hidden alliances often crossed house boundaries. While Gryffindor and Slytherin are remembered primarily as rivals, those with acute awareness of magical politics understood that members frequently collaborated behind closed doors, exchanging knowledge, resources, and protection. Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff, often portrayed as insulated and scholastic, were equally enmeshed in these networks. Students learned early that alliances were not merely personal, they were strategic. A single alliance could influence dueling outcomes, potion competitions, and even the spread of critical knowledge about magical creatures or spells. Professors were rarely oblivious to these covert societies. In many cases, they were active participants or silent supporters. Heads of house maintained awareness of student dynamics far beyond the official curriculum, subtly nudging alliances toward stability or, occasionally, disruption. Certain staff members used these societies to cultivate loyalty, test ethical resolve, or prepare students for challenges beyond the castle walls. Others, motivated by ambition or ideology, manipulated these groups to further personal agendas. The role of these societies extended beyond internal politics. Some were involved in external magical affairs, acting as conduits for intelligence between Hogwarts and influential figures in the broader wizarding world. Messages, warnings, and coded instructions were often routed through trusted student operatives, disguised as innocuous correspondence or casual interactions. The castle itself, with its moving staircases, enchanted corridors, and sentient portraits, provided the perfect environment for this intricate intelligence network to function undetected. Even rituals and traditions were not immune to hidden influence. Dueling clubs, potion contests, and house competitions were often carefully monitored or manipulated to encourage particular students to develop skills deemed valuable for larger, unseen objectives. Instructors and senior students alike could orchestrate challenges designed to test loyalty, ingenuity, or moral courage. Through this subtle engineering, Hogwarts produced generations of students capable of critical thinking, discretion, and strategic decision-making, qualities far beyond mere magical competence. Not all societies pursued noble aims. Some engaged in morally ambiguous or outright dangerous practices, using the cover of tradition or secrecy to experiment with forbidden spells, occult rituals, or subversive ideologies. These factions often disappeared from public record, yet their influence persisted, subtly shaping student behavior, ethical norms, and even the castle's reputation. Conflicts between these groups, though rarely visible, created undercurrents of tension that informed the social fabric of Hogwarts for decades. The existence of these alliances demonstrates a truth often overlooked. Hogwarts was never just a school. It was a crucible where magical talent, ethical judgment, and political acumen were simultaneously tested, nurtured, and networked. Students who understood the dynamics of hidden societies learned early that survival, influence, and success depended not solely on skill or courage, but on observation, alliance building, and strategic discretion. As evening falls and candlelight flickers in the high tower windows, one can almost sense the invisible threads connecting students past and present. The legacy of secret societies, both protective and dangerous, lingers, shaping the behavior of those who walk the castle halls and, through them, influencing the broader currents of magical history. Hogwarts' true mastery lay not in its public rituals or famed curricula, but in the cultivation of subtle networks that prepared its students for the real world, where knowledge, influence, and discretion could determine life or death. As night settles over Hogwarts, a quiet magic awakens in the spaces few dare to tread. The castle's grandeur, the soaring towers, echoing halls, and glittering classrooms conceals secrets that even the bravest students rarely glimpse. Beyond the classrooms and the Great Hall lie corridors that shift with intention, staircases that lead nowhere, and doors that open only for those deemed worthy. These hidden paths are not mere tricks of enchantment. They are repositories of knowledge, power, and caution, carefully curated over centuries. The concept of forbidden corridors is often reduced to youthful misadventures, but the reality is far more deliberate and profound. Many passages were created to protect dangerous knowledge, rare and volatile spells, cursed artifacts, or experimental potions too powerful for unsupervised use. Others functioned as conduits of collective memory, holding whispers of the castle's history that were too sensitive to be recorded in conventional ways. The walls themselves became guardians of wisdom, responding only to those who approached with respect, intelligence, and discretion. Among the most notorious of these secret spaces is the so-called Chamber of Shadows. Ancient records suggest it was constructed long before Hogwarts's formal founding, or perhaps simultaneously, as a private study for the earliest magi who sought to contain knowledge that might threaten the school's equilibrium. The chamber is invisible to casual eyes, existing in layers of spatial enchantment that obscure it from mundane perception. Those who entered, willingly or by accident, were tested immediately through enchantments that probed moral judgment, magical skill, and the depth of one's curiosity. Only those who passed could access the chamber's true contents: texts on advanced spellcraft, accounts of long-forgotten magical conflicts, and instructions for manipulating magical forces far beyond ordinary comprehension. Hidden chambers, however, were not always sanctuaries for the wise. Some served as traps or prisons, designed to contain magical misdeeds or punish hubris. Artifacts with the potential to corrupt, creatures too dangerous to roam freely, and spells capable of destabilizing reality itself were often sequestered in these spaces. The castle's architecture and enchantments acted as a delicate ecosystem, balancing protection, concealment, and accessibility in ways that even the most sophisticated modern security systems would struggle to replicate. Corridors themselves were alive with subtle forms of magic. Floors might sense intent, staircases responded to hesitation or resolve, and portraits whispered hints or misdirections to those who approached. Many students reported feelings of disorientation, déjà vu, or sudden insight when traversing certain passages. Far from random, these experiences were carefully calibrated by generations of enchantments to educate, warn, or illuminate. In essence, Hogwarts' hidden corridors acted as a silent tutor, teaching lessons that were impossible to convey through lectures or textbooks. The castle's concealed magic extended to objects as well. Enchanted artifacts, hidden in plain sight, carried layers of knowledge that could only be unlocked by understanding both magical mechanics and historical context. A seemingly mundane quill might hold centuries of recorded wisdom, or a statue might function as a complex archive of spells. Students with keen observation and a patient mind often stumbled upon these tools, inadvertently receiving advanced training that shaped their magical competence and strategic thinking. The presence of such hidden magic reveals a crucial truth about Hogwarts. The school cultivated not only skill, but wisdom. Students were not just learning spells, they were learning discernment. They discovered that knowledge, power, and curiosity carry consequences, and that the path to mastery requires both daring and caution. In the forbidden corridors, the castle itself became a mentor, an omniscient observer guiding those who sought true understanding while quietly testing character, judgment, and foresight. Finally, it is in these hidden passages that the earliest lessons of resilience and adaptability were learned. Students navigated labyrinthine corridors, deciphered shifting enchantments, and negotiated the castle's secret rules. These experiences, while often frightening, fostered independence, critical thinking, and an intuitive understanding of magical systems, skills that were indispensable in the wider wizarding world. By understanding the hidden architecture of Hogwarts, one sees the school not as a mere place of education, but as a living system of intelligence designed to nurture, protect, and test the magical mind. Every secret passage, every enchanted lock, and every concealed chamber reinforce the idea that true power is inseparable from knowledge, vigilance, and wisdom. As the sun sets over the towering spires of Hogwarts, a quiet truth settles over the castle. It is older, deeper, and far more mysterious than anyone alive has ever fully understood. The corridors echo not only with the footsteps of students past and present, but with centuries of choices that shaped destinies, forged alliances, and warned against hubris. Tonight, the castle sleeps, yet the magic that courses through its walls never rests. Portraits murmur forgotten wisdom to those who listen closely. Staircases remember the paths of those who dared to seek forbidden knowledge. Hidden chambers breathe with enchantments that respond to intent, courage, and curiosity. Every stone, every spell, every shadow is a testament to the extraordinary design of Hogwarts, not merely as a school, but as a living repository of magical intelligence. We now understand that Hogwarts' greatness was never in its grandeur, its towering turrets, or even in the power of its most famous alumni. Its true achievement lies in the subtle, quiet systems it developed, the hidden curricula that taught discernment and resilience, the secret passages that tested judgment, the collaborative and clandestine networks of knowledge that preserved wisdom across centuries. Hogwarts was a civilization within walls, a society that balanced freedom with responsibility, curiosity with caution, and power with conscience. The darkest lessons of the school, long erased from history, were never punishments. They were tests of character, of foresight, of the ability to hold knowledge responsibly. The cursed books, the forbidden spells, the perilous corridors, they were mirrors, reflecting not only what magic could do, but what humans could become if left unchecked. Those who survived, who mastered both intellect and morality, carried forward legacies that shaped the wizarding world in ways invisible to outsiders.